Nyugati Főcsatorna. Szabad szó, tiszta beszéd. Na ez a beszéd. Köszöntöm a Nyugati Főcsatorna nézőit. Daniel Freund, zöldpárti német képviselő, 2019. júliusától az Európa Parlament tagja. Elnöke a csalás és korrupció ellenes csoportnak, ezáltal grállovakként harcol a magyar kormány kétes játékai ellen. Elkötelezett abban, hogy feltárja a gyanús ügyeket, és az Európa Parlamentben minden követ megmozgat, hogy eredményre jusson. Ami nem sikerült a Tavares jelentésnek elérni 2013-ban, és a Sargentini jelentésnek 2018-ban, sőt, a 7. cikkely szerinti eljárás sem vezetett eredményre, lehetséges, hogy ez a fiatal képviselő kiharcolja majd. 2020-ban a Hello Diktátor című dokumentumfilmben vállalt jelentős szerepet. A magyar politikai viszonyokba ásott mélyebbre. Daniel Freund a legelszántabb EP-képviselő az európai kultúra oldalán Magyarországért is dolgozik. Következzék Weiss Edith interjúja Daniel Freunddal.
Daniel Freund, a member of the European Parliament, thank you very much for joining me today. You are chair of the European Union Intergroup, whose task is actually to fight against corruption and fraud within the European Union. You're also a harsh critic of Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, and you've been on a field trip to study and observe the toxic effect of corruption and the systematic destruction of democracy and the rule of law within the European Union. You also have contributed to the production of the documentary Hello Dictator, that is actually from today, available with Hungarian subtitles. So we are very much looking forward to seeing it with Hungarian subtitles. We acknowledge your work, and we acknowledge and appreciate your efforts, everything that you do to uncover the frauds and corruption within the European Union. Nevertheless, the Hungarian people feel somehow betrayed by the European Union itself for letting things come this far. There have been studies, many studies actually, and reports about the situation in these countries, now particularly in Hungary. And there have been beautiful speeches and nice phrases and promises made, but actually we have not yet seen anything specific done against the deterioration of what's going on now in Hungary. Hungarians actually fear that with the slow bureaucratic practices of the European Union institutions, any action will actually be too late before the 2022 elections in Hungary. What specific actions can be expected and when?
Well, thanks for having me, and I think it's a good moment to talk about these topics. What concrete actions can be expected? I mean, that's a question mostly, I guess, for the European Commission, right? They are the ones that are in charge of protecting the treaties. They are in charge of protecting the rule of law in member states. What we do in the Parliament is mostly pushing the Commission so that they finally do spring into action, because as you say, for years we have seen the situation deteriorate, attacks after attacks on free media, on the independence of the judiciary, huge corruption scandals that we have seen time and again, and very little action. So the Commission has a number of tools at its disposal. The European Parliament actually already over 3 years ago launched the so-called Article 7 procedure for violation of the fundamental values of the Union. This procedure has been stuck in the Council among the member states' governments ever since. Nothing has happened. The Commission has done a few infringement procedures here and there, but I think they could do much more even with the existing tools, right?
You're saying they could do much more, but what can you do actually to force them to do more?
Well, what we have started to do now is well, beyond having launched the Article 7 procedure and late last year now to adopt the rule of law conditionality mechanism that allows us to freeze EU funds to member states that violate the rule of law. So now what we're doing is basically we have set a clear deadline for the European Commission to use this rule of law mechanism. We want to see, it's the 1st of June, where we want to see a clear plan on how the Commission is going to move forward with this. And if the Commission doesn't move by the 1st of June, then the European Parliament is going to take the European Commission to court and sue them for inaction. So
this is a first, right? This has never happened before.
It has happened before, not in the area of rule of law. There was a case in the 90s where the Parliament has sued the Commission for not putting forward legislation on free movement. It was successful at the time as well, and so I'm expecting that it will be successful as well this time. I hope, of course, that we don't have to wait for a court case and a ruling by the court, but that the Commission will actually start moving. Because I think what's very clear for us as the European Parliament is that we are serious about the rule of law in Europe. We're not going to let the Commission get away, and we're going to do everything that we can to spring them into action. First, now we set the deadline. If they don't move, we're going to go to court. But if that doesn't produce results reasonably quickly, I mean, there's further escalation possible on the side of the European Parliament, right? The ultimate tool that the Parliament has at its disposal is to dismiss the European Commission, right? We're not there yet, but yeah, I mean, it's called a vote of no confidence, right? We can remove the Commission if they don't do what the Parliament wants.
I would like to come back to this topic where you mentioned Article 7 and the actions that have been taken. After the European Parliament came out with the rule of law mechanism, in Hungary, both sides actually claimed victory. One side celebrated because principally there is now a means to sanction states disrespecting the rule of law. On the other side, like on the government side, they were basically relieved because practically nothing happened, and as they are hoping, nothing will happen in the future. How do you interpret this? There was a huge debate, of course, online among the citizens and between the parties that who actually has the right here to claim victory.
Yeah, I think both are right for the time being. I think what basically happened is that short term, it's true that for now nothing has happened, right? No sanctions procedure has been launched, and at least as far as we hear from the Commission, there is still many months before such a procedure will actually be launched. But ultimately, it will come. And
what is more or less, I know it's difficult to say, but what is more or less the time frame where you would actually expect realistically something?
It's a bit difficult to say because it depends now. Well, we are pushing the Commission to start right away, right? But what they are saying is that they want to wait for the ECJ ruling before they launch the procedure. It's a bit guesswork how long exactly the ECJ will take. The rule of law mechanism regulation is not a very complex or long one. It's just 5 or 6 pages of legal text. So it could be that the analysis goes reasonably fast. Could take about 8 months until the ECJ has ruled, and then it will take about 12 months for the Commission to go through all the steps until the money funds could be frozen to Hungary, right?
So this actually means that the Hungarian government has now pretty much free space definitely until the 2022 elections. It will take place in April, so like a year from now.
Well, I mean, it depends what you mean by that, right? the funds that can be affected by this, I mean, that period has started on the 1st of January. So even the money that is being spent now by the government could possibly be recouped, you know, under a procedure, even if it's only launched in the future. The other question is at what point, what kind of political pressure actually already happens. You know, if the European Commission were to launch a sanctions procedure, even if the funds are not frozen yet, but there is an official launch of a procedure just ahead of the election, you know, that might already have an effect. It gives an argument to the other parties that, look, what the Fidesz government is doing is jeopardizing EU funds coming to Hungary. So if you want to ensure that, you know, Hungary can take advantage of the Corona Recovery Fund and so on, maybe you want to vote for a different party, right? So I agree with you that, you know, the actual freezing of funds is unlikely to happen before the elections, but that doesn't mean that the mechanism isn't already having an effect, because what I hear from Budapest is that they're already looking at the way that public tenders, for example, are working. They are becoming more cautious, you know, in their corruption in a way, because they might be afraid of things to come. So in that sense, yes, the full effect isn't there, and it might be some time until that really kicks in. But I also think that there already is something happening, and that more things. I very much hope, and I, as I said, I'm doing everything, and many colleagues in the parliament are doing everything so that the Commission moves, so that more things are coming before the end of the year, definitely.
Another very important point that you frequently mention is the importance of the European Prosecutor's Office. And then you write and you say that there are now, I think, 22 member states that have joined the European Prosecutor's Office, and obviously there are those that haven't, including Hungary. And you write very nicely that you encourage, it will be very important to encourage those states and countries that have not joined to reconsider. Now, these are nice words again. What do you mean by encourage? Is there anything that you can specifically do for these countries to reconsider? And most importantly, are there any consequences? What are the consequences, if there are any, that can be done to those that actually refuse?
Yeah, so I would say there's two different categories of countries currently refusing to join the European Public Prosecutors, right? There's Denmark, Sweden, and Ireland on the one hand, where there's different. There's in some cases there's question of a necessary constitutional change. There's also some reservations, particularly in Denmark, towards, you know, they have always had issues in the area of home affairs and judicial cooperation, where they have had many opt-outs. But in Sweden, for example, the government has a clear plan to join EPO. They're just figuring out the way how to make it work with the constitution and so on. So on those governments and Ireland as well, I just hope, you know, that they get on the way and that they figure out the legal obstacles and then join EPO. On the two other governments, Poland and Hungary, this is of course a very different issue. It's good to see that in Hungary now the unified opposition says that if they would win the election next year, they, you know, joining EPO would one of the first things that they want to do. So that's a promising sign already. Unfortunately, we can't at the moment in any way force member states to join the public prosecutor, right? That's the decision of member states. And there's no way to force them. I hope that there could be a way, you know, to make it more attractive to those that are a member, that you, for example, could get a bit of a simplified audit procedure or something. I had actually also hoped when we started the discussions on the Corona Recovery Fund that we would say, that it is a condition for receiving Corona aid, that you have to be a member of EPO, but that wasn't possible at the time. And then in a way, there was a political choice to be made. Do we want the rule of law mechanism, or do we want the EPO membership? And many other colleagues here in the parliament as well opted for the rule of law mechanism instead of the public prosecutor. But I think we need to continue that fight and hopefully get all member states to join. And in the meantime, of course, make sure that EPO can properly work and at least does good work in those 22 member states that are already members to EPO, given that some of these member states also have quite serious issues with fraud and corruption against the EU budget.
You're from Germany, so my next question would be related to Germany. Many in Hungary, I would say, hold or at least blame or hold Germany responsible, not Germany itself, of course, but rather the car industry, for supporting a government like Hungary and creating a situation that we find ourselves right now. How do you see this? You recently tweeted that any paid lobbying will be forbidden in Germany in the future. Will this have any effect at all on anything concerning democratic values versus economic interest?
It is, of course, true that German companies have an important role to play in Hungary. The economic ties between Germany and Hungary are incredibly close. It's not only the car industry, but obviously the car industry plays a huge role. And I think it's particularly problematic. I mean, in a way, you can't reproach to companies to wanting to make good business and profits, right? And if they find the situation in Hungary of comparatively low wages, good qualified people, so obviously this has been a good deal for them that has allowed the German car makers to earn a lot of money. But I think it's particularly disturbing in those cases where where public entities or the government hold blocking minorities or large participations in companies that are then active in Hungary. And that's the case of Volkswagen, for example, which is for a large part publicly owned by the state of Niedersachsen. We had also that story with the economic engagement of Deutsche Telekom, which again is still for a large share owned by the German government, who holds a minority stake, so a blocking minority. And for example, the news portal Origo was owned by Deutsche Telekom and then sold off to a close associate of Viktor Orbán, who made it a government mouthpiece, right? And that's something that the German government, with its blocking minority share in Deutsche Telekom, could have prevented, and they did not. And I think that's really not a glorious thing for the German government to have done that. I think if you look at the track record of Angela Merkel, of the heads of the German conservative parties during the last 10 years, not only have they sort of held a protective hand over Orbán, over Fidesz, over what's been going on in Hungary, but I mean, for a long time they have cheered this on, right? The CSU, the Bavarian conservatives, Orbán was a frequent guest at their party gatherings. Manfred Weber, the head of the conservative group in the European Parliament, was still campaigning for Orbán in 2018.
How will this change now with the new situation? I'm sorry to interrupt you. How will this change if now that the Fidesz is not anymore part of the European People's Party?
Well, I'd be surprised if any of the EPP member parties still campaign for Orbán, right? So there is a definite break now. There have been insults, and I think the relationship has gotten much more distant over the past few months. Mm-hmm. So I would think that this is over in terms of campaigning for him. How much this now actually means that the EPP will be more engaged in terms of ensuring that the rule of law is respected, I think judgment on that is still out. In the European Parliament, the EPP was supportive of the rule of law mechanism. Mm-hmm. So that was good. Ursula von der Leyen, who is also an EPP member politician, right? Does this now mean that the Commission will be more engaged in the fight for the rule of law, that it will be more willing to launch infringement procedures, or maybe even use the rights that they have under the Common Provisions Regulation to already halt funding because the management and control systems in Hungary have collapsed, and you can no longer ensure that EU money is adequately spent. Yeah. We will see. I haven't seen a marked change in the Commission's behavior since Fidesz has left, but this is still reasonably fresh. So
the Hungarian government likes sending messages to Brussels. They put out those huge billboards in major cities, crossroads, major highways, and so on. My last question to you today is, what message do you think Brussels is sending to the Hungarian people?
I mean, for the last 10 years, the message has unfortunately been that whatever the Hungarian government does, that Brussels isn't really gonna do anything about it. And I hope, I very much hope that this message changes very, very soon, because it's long overdue. It shouldn't have gone like this. I know that apparently some people were surprised, when with the whole enlargement of the EU, the transformation of formerly Soviet or Soviet-influenced countries. The EU lacks some of the tools to deal with these issues. It worked very well during the accession process. There we seem to have had the necessary pressure and incentives so that there was really a reform process, not only in Hungary, but in all the neighboring countries, something that we hadn't seen in this speed and in this quality probably anywhere in the world ever. But with the moment of accession, the pressure was off. And since then, we have seen stagnation, and in the case of Hungary, a very clear decline or rollback of rule of law, of the fight against corruption, of democracy, of freedoms for citizens, and that's something that we need to fix, because it cannot be that in the European Union we have what is now no longer qualifies as a democracy, and the European Union is a union of democracies, of functioning rule of law systems. And we need to come back to that urgently.
What would you say to the Hungarian people, considering and not disregarding the fact that it's not only the responsibility of the European Union to bring about change, but it's very much the responsibility of the Hungarian people themselves. Now, considering the lack of free media that is accessible to everybody, because obviously we have online media, but that is not accessible to everybody equally or easily. Considering all these obstacles, what would you tell the Hungarian people that are actually not happy with this system? What can they do?
Well, ultimately, the EU cannot change the Hungarian government, and that should never be the ambition, right? What we can do is stop giving a lot of money to the government to enrich themselves personally, and they use that money as well to solidify their power base. So that's something that we can fix. But ultimately, if Hungarians want to come back to the club of democracies, if they want to be a constructive and engaged partner in the European Union, then it's up to the Hungarians to change the government. There is an opportunity coming soon, and I think it's up to the Hungarian people to change the course of their country. I know it's difficult. The system gives a huge advantage to Fidesz. Even if you win an equal share of votes, it's far from guaranteed that you get an equal representation in parliament. It is an uphill battle under a Fidesz-controlled media onslaught, but I think it's possible. There are some promising signs with the opposition, not fighting against each other anymore, but now a united opposition. But it will be quite a task to rebuild what the damage that has been done over the last few years. But I think it's the only way to go.
Daniel Freund, thank you so much. Vielen Dank.
Thanks for talking to me.